You've been lied to. From childhood, you were told that being nice is the key to a good life, that if you're kind, agreeable, selfless, the world will reward you, people will like you, you'll be loved, respected, safe. But how many times have you played nice and gotten burned? How many times did you bite your tongue while someone else crossed the line? How often did you say yes when every cell in your body screamed no? You thought you were doing the right thing, you were being good. But in the real world, good people don't always win. They're used, ignored, walked over. Because while you were playing by the rules, others were writing their own. In relationships, you give without keeping score. You listen, care, and sacrifice. But somehow, you're the one who ends up abandoned, forgotten, ghosted. Why? Because being endlessly available doesn't inspire love. It breeds contempt. At work, you take on the extra load. You say, no problem while drowning in tasks. You smooth things over. You never ask for credit. And yet, promotions go to the loud ones, the bold ones, the ones who know how to say no. In groups, you avoid conflict. You play mediator. You don't speak your mind because you don't want to offend. And slowly, people stop listening. You become invisible, not respected, just tolerated. But here's the truth no one told you. Niceness isn't always kindness. Sometimes it's fear wearing a smile, a fear of confrontation, a fear of rejection, a fear of being disliked. So you trade your power for temporary approval and call it virtue. But the world doesn't care how nice you are. It cares how useful you are, how strong, how clear. Niceness without boundaries isn't noble. It's self-erasure. It's handing the steering wheel of your life to everyone else and hoping they don't crash it. And yet, you were conditioned to believe this illusion, conditioned to associate decency with docility, to think that being agreeable was the same as being good, to believe that silence was peace. But silence can be a coffin, and constant agreeableness, a slow form of self-destruction. So now you face a choice. Will you keep believing the fantasy that niceness will save you? Or will you start to question everything you were taught and face how the world really works? Because the price of always being nice is losing who you really are. You didn't choose to be this way. The impulse to please, to smile when you want to scream, to agree when you want to walk away, it was programmed into you. From the moment you could speak, you were taught. Be good. Don't make trouble. Make people happy. They dressed it up as manners, politeness, social grace. But what they were really teaching you was obedience, because a child who learns to please is easy to control, and society thrives on control, not truth. You were trained to seek approval like oxygen, to flinch at disapproval like pain. Every compliment made you feel worthy, every frown a punishment, so you learned to shapeshift, to smile through discomfort, to apologize even when you weren't wrong. You thought it made you kind, but really, it made you invisible. Carl Jung warned us, what we repress becomes the shadow, and the shadow always grows in silence. Every time you swallowed your anger, every time you laughed at what hurt you, every time you played small to make others feel big, you fed the part of yourself that no longer knows who it is. Nietzsche called it the will to power, the deep, primal drive to assert yourself in the world. But yours was buried, mothered beneath layers of guilt, shame, and niceness. And so you wonder why life feels hollow, why people don't respect you, why your kindness is met with silence or scorn. It's because they don't see kindness, they see weakness. And weakness, no matter how sweet, is prey. You weren't born passive. You were trained to be, trained to fear your own strength, trained to confuse conflict with danger, trained to believe that wanting more, respect, space, power, made you selfish. But here's the deeper trap. You started needing to be needed, craving the role of the helper, tying your worth to your usefulness. So you give and give and give, till there's nothing left of you but an echo. And the worst part? You do it with a smile, because you've been conditioned to see your own sacrifice as love. But self-sacrifice isn't love. It's self-abandonment dressed as virtue. This is the psychological prison, the invisible chains of approval seeking, and most never escape, because escaping means facing a terrifying truth, that your niceness might not be goodness at all, but fear wrapped in a mask. So now ask yourself, what are you really afraid of if you stopped being nice? Look around you. The people with power, the ones who get the job, the lover, the spotlight, are not always the smartest, not the kindest, often not even the most competent. But they understand one thing: perception is power. In this world, it doesn't matter who you really are. It matters who people think you are. And the person who controls that image controls the game. You've been taught to be transparent, to be authentic, to share your feelings, be open, be honest. But raw honesty without strategy isn't brave. It's naive. The world doesn't reward vulnerability. It consumes it. Meanwhile, the powerful move differently. They speak less, reveal less. They make people guess. They don't chase approval. They create tension. And in that tension, people lean in. It's the CEO who walks into a room and says almost nothing, but owns the silence. It's the politician who smiles without promising, who hints without exposing, and leaves you wanting more. It's the mysterious colleague who doesn't gossip, doesn't overshare, doesn't explain, and yet commands respect without asking for it. Because in the social mask game, mystery is leverage. Scarcity creates value, and the less you reveal, the more they project. But you've been told to be real, so you over-explain, you overshare, you try to win hearts with openness, thinking it builds trust. It doesn't. It makes you predictable, easy to read, easy to control. People don't respect those who beg for connection. They respect those who can walk away. And every time you say, "I just want to be liked," you hand them your power. Understand this. People believe what you present, not what you feel. You can be calm and be terrified. You can be angry and appear serene. You can be kind and never be soft. Powerful people wear masks not to deceive, but to defend, to protect the core, to control the narrative. Because in a world where everyone is screaming for attention, the one who holds back dominates. So now ask yourself, when you enter a room, do people feel your presence, or do they sense your need? Are you projecting strength or begging for approval? You don't have to stay this way. You don't have to keep shrinking to make others comfortable. You don't have to keep playing the nice guy and losing, because there's another path, a colder one, but far more honest. The path of strategy. This doesn't mean becoming cruel, it means becoming awake. There's a difference between being good and being soft. One is a choice, the other is a lack of strength. You can still care, but from a position of control. You can still give, without letting them take everything. It starts with understanding this. You are not obligated to be liked. You are not here to smooth every edge, soften every blow, please every person. You are here to live with purpose, not to be palatable. Machiavelli said it best, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But you can be both if you move with intention. You become kind, but never naive. You speak the truth, but not all of it. You show compassion, but never let it override your judgment. This is the power shift. You stop over-explaining. You let your silence make them uncomfortable. You use mystery as a weapon. You don't react. You respond. You set boundaries without guilt. You say no without flinching. You leave when respect is no longer given, and the moment you do, the world changes. People lean in when they can't predict you. They listen when you rarely speak. They respect you when you walk away instead of begging to stay. Because now, you're no longer nice. You're dangerous. With a conscience, you're still ethical, still fair, still decent, but no longer available for exploitation. You're not trying to be agreeable. You're choosing to be effective. And here's the twist. When you stop needing approval, you often get it. Because power is magnetic, and people are drawn to those who no longer need them. This transformation isn't loud. It happens quietly, in the way you hold your eye contact, the way you pause before you speak, the way you choose your words instead of spilling them. You've seen this before in people who used to be soft until life cut them open, and they stitched themselves back together with armor. You've met them. Now it's time to become one. The shift isn't easy, but once it happens, there's no going back. So the question now is, will you keep being the one who's easy to like, or become the one they never forget? Here's the truth most people never dare to say out loud. Power is not something you hold, it's something you control through perception. You don't need to dominate. You don't need to shout. You don't even need to win every battle. You just need to know when to act and when to disappear, because real power isn't loud. It's silent, surgical, chosen. It's not in the kindness you give freely, but in the kindness you withhold strategically. It's not in the words you say, but in the ones you don't. You've been taught to believe morality and power are enemies, that if you want to stay good, you must stay soft, stay small, but that's a lie. True morality, the kind that reshapes the world, is never weak. It's calculated, sharp, precise. It chooses where to give, where to cut, where to walk away. It's the warrior who fights only when it matters, not the martyr who dies to prove a point. Because when you're weak, your morality is useless. You can't help others when you're being crushed. You can't speak the truth when no one hears you. You can't lead when you're begging to follow. You must become the kind of person who can carry power without being owned by it. That means you don't chase validation. You create gravity. You don't reveal your every thought. You let others wonder. You don't react to every insult. You choose your battles like a king. This is the final law. Power is perception, controlled by restraint. Every time you hold back, you build tension. Every time you say less, they think more. Every time you stay silent, they fill in the gaps. And in those gaps, you become larger than life. But make no mistake, this isn't about ego. It's about liberation, the freedom to act from choice, not fear. The strength to walk away, not out of pride, but because you know your worth. The calm that comes when you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You don't have to be ruthless. You don't have to become cold. But you must never be weak, because in this world, weakness wears a smile and calls itself virtue. But inside, it's breaking, fading, forgotten. So now the choice is yours. Stay nice and stay forgotten. Or rise, become strategic, become calm, become unshakable. Let them wonder who you really are. Let them feel your presence without needing your approval, because the most dangerous person in the room is the one who knows exactly when to disappear.